Hi, Gary Chillingworth here for Airgun World Magazine, Shooting and Country TV. Welcome to Life at a Range. Apologies for the fact I'm a few days late. I've been a bit under the weather and didn't quite get to do the filming that I wanted to do. As you can probably hear, I'm still a little bit croaky. But what we're going to look at today? Well, today we're going to answer a question that I had from a viewer about a week or so back now. And he said, Gary, I've got a rifle and it just won't group. It's been fine in the past, but now I just can't get the accuracy that I had before. Can you help? Any advice? I'm pulling my hair out. Well, luckily, as I've got no hair and I've already pulled it out, I thought, well, do you know what? I'll give it a go. So today we're going to go through a few basic checks that you can do that will hopefully fix any problems that you have. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at why will my rifle will not group. Welcome to Life at a Range. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is you need to get one of these. This is a driving license. You can also use a passport. You can also use any other sort of photo ID that you've got. When you've got your photo ID, check it and see if it's got the name Steve O'Mara on it. If it's got the name Steve O'Mara, then that explains why you can't get your rifle to group. Sorry, Steve, I couldn't resist that. Okay, right, so the first thing is the most simple thing. Check that everything is tight. On your rifle, you've got multiple things that can work loose. Here we've got our HFT 500, so check your stock bolts. Check all of your scope mounts, the ones that attach you to the dovetail, and obviously the ones that attach the scope to the actual mounts itself. Check that your butt pad is stiff. If your butt pad is loose, and when you're laying down on your position and you've actually got some movement, that could affect your accuracy. So check that your cheek risers nice and tight, your butt pad, all of your stock bolts, your mounts and everything else. Just make sure that everything is right and tight. Now the next thing is be aware, has there been a change to your trigger? Now, I know this might sound a little bit odd, but triggers make a huge difference to your level of accuracy. On my spring gun, when my springer starts to get a bit graunchy or the trigger gets a bit graunchy, my accuracy starts to deplete. So you might need to take your trigger apart and give it a polish. Now, taking a trigger apart, luckily, if you've got an air arms gun, it's a relatively easy trigger to take apart and to service. We've covered it in a video. If you've got an Anschutz trigger, that's around about 4,853 different moving parts. Wouldn't recommend it. So be aware of what your trigger is. There's loads of YouTube videos out on each different types of triggers, but have a look at your trigger and see whether or not it's within your capability. But strongly recommend, if you've got a poor graunchy trigger, if you don't know when it's going to go off, or if it's just feeling heavy, adjust it, clean it, or get someone you know to help you adjust it and clean it. So a trigger is incredibly important. The next question you need to ask is, when you say the gun has gone off and it's not grouping, what do you actually mean by this? Do you mean, has it changed zero, or is the gun shotgunning? If you've got, let me to grab a pen. So that's your crosshairs, and everything you would expect to hit should be around about there. If all of a sudden it's going all over like that, then there is an issue. You know, you are shotgunning the pellets, your groups have grown from that to that. If, however, everything is now just hitting to the right hand side, then you've just had a change of zero. So that's what you need to identify. Has your zero changed, or are you shotgunning pellets? Now, we're coming into winter. If it is this issue and everything has moved to the right, have you changed the clothing you're wearing? Now, this might sound ridiculous, but I've seen it so many times. This is what I shoot in. This is my Air Arms fleece, and during the summertime, autumn, this is what you will see me wear. When we move into the winter, I will start wearing a much heavier coat, and that has got a much thicker collar. Now often when it's cold, we've got the collar up, and if you're now shooting like that and the collar is getting between you and the cheek piece, it will move your eye over to the left and you could end up with a change of zero. People's jackets and the clothing they wear, the way they're constricted, can often change the way that they shoot. So have you changed your clothing? Will that affect the way that you fire your gun? That's another thing to be aware of. So if you've just changed zero, then because of clothing you're wearing, then you might just need to re-zero, or you just need to modulate the clothing you're wearing so it's not affecting your gun. But if it's just changed zero, it might be a case that the scope has been knocked or something like that. But as long as you're getting consistency, so let's say that it's just moved 2 pellets to the right, then you might just need to zero back. You might have tapped your scope as it went into the bag or anything like that. But what we're looking at today is a gun that is not shooting well. It's shotgunning. It has got that style of thing. You know, the groups have opened up, and that is what we're going to look at next. Okay, so your rifle isn't shooting as well as you'd hope. It's shotgunning. One of the first questions I've got to ask is it shotgunning? Do you have unrealistic expectations from your rifle or from you as a person? Now, not being critical here, but I've met people in the past, and on one occasion they've put 3 or 4 pellets 30 yards and they've all gone through the same hole, and they now consider themselves that is the type of groups that they can shoot. Most of the time they're shooting worse groups than that, but they remember that one time. Could have been a case that the wind blew the groups in or whatever like that. I don't mind. Everyone will get better. There is nothing wrong with being a bad shot as long as you are trying to get better. I used to be a very bad shot. Some say I still am. But be realistic. If you've gone out on the range and you're 45 yards and you're using a spring gun and you're not expecting to get a group inside of your fingernail, I think you're being unrealistic. However, if you've got, I don't know, an XTI 50 and you're at 25 yards and you've got a group the size of that, in still conditions, I would say there's an issue. So, are you being unrealistic with what you're expecting from the rifle? We're going to assume not. On a practical rule of thumb, at 25 yards, most rifles are going to shoot inside of a 5p piece. Unless you're using the most bog standard spring gun that you can get, most PCPs and high-end springers should be able to shoot inside of a 5p piece at 25 yards. So think about your expectations. What are you expecting from the gun? What do you believe other people can get from the gun? So manage your expectations. Right, so let's get into the meat of it. Let's now try to see what is going on with your rifle. The first thing you need to do is you need to take out your ability as a shooter. And what do I mean by that? Well, we've spoken many times about parallax and the fact that if you're not getting your head permanently in the correct position, then that can cause pellets to go left to right, up, down. So what I want you to do is if your rifle, or if your scope has got a parallax setting of around about 25 yards, set out a paper target at 25 yards with a good backstop and look through your scope. Now, once you're looking through your scope, I want you to move your head up, down, left, right, and just keep on bobbing it around and having a look to see whether or not the crosshair is moving on the mark on the paper. So you've put a piece of paper out, you put a mark like that on it, and now you're moving your head around. If the crosshairs are still moving, then that's not at your parallax. So you either need to adjust the parallax by a fraction, try it again, and I want you to get to a point where you're moving your head around and that crosshair is never moving out of the dot that you've put. put. So that now means that when you're looking through your rifle, even if your head is slightly off or round, as long as that crosshair is in that dot, that is where the pellets are going to hit. That's removing the human element. Now I want you to shoot a 5-shot group. Where are those pellets going? Are they going just straight up and down? Are they going left and right, up and down? Have a look to see where those pellets are landing. Then I want you to put another dot on and do it again, put another dot on, do it again, do another dot, do it again. So you've got around about 20, 25 shots, and each time you can see what's happening. So now we're going to look at what the different types of groups mean. If your pellets, if this is your dot that you're shooting at, your pellets are striking up and down, they're like almost in a straight line, you're not getting much left or right, then I would say you've probably got a power issue. And at that point, you really need to get hold of a chronograph, borrow one from a friend, buy one. They're not that expensive. I use the LMB RR2A, but there are much cheaper ones available. And check your power. Are you going up and down? If you're over the chrono and you've got 780, 780, 750, 730, 740, 790, then you've clearly got an issue. That could be that the regulator has developed a fault. It might need that your internals have got gunged up. If you're firing with a hammer, that might have got dirty, the valve might have got dirty, but you're not getting consistent over the chrono. Might also mean that you've got a split O-ring. So measure it over the chronograph and see whether or not you have got an issue with power going up and down. But let's assume that you don't have an issue with power going up and down. Another thing that can cause a pellet to go straight up and down can be things like breech seals and pellet probes. On this rifle, on the front, this one doesn't have a pellet seal, but on some rifles, on the front here, of the probe, there is there is a small O-ring that creates the seal on the back pressure, the seal as a pellet goes into the breech. If that has become worn, just flip it off, put a new one on, test again. I had a big issue with accuracy on my TX200, and it drove me absolutely batty. And on the end of the compression tube, there is an O-ring, and I didn't know that there were 2 O-rings in that compression tube. So I just replaced one and didn't make a difference. It was only when Andy Day told me there's 2 and you need to do both. I did both and it fixed the issue. So a good thing is go onto the forums of your particular gun and see if there's any specific little issues that can cause inaccuracy to your rifle. But pellet probes, breech seals and things like that, that will cause you inaccuracy. So that's a few things to look at. But the question is, when you're shooting at your parallax distance, if all of a sudden all the pellets are now going through the same hole, or within that thing, I hate to say it, the problem might very well be you. You might have an issue, whatever. We all go through those things where you think your gun is wrong. You're convinced that your gun is wrong, and you get there and you're shooting, and because you want it to be good, you get tense, and if you get tense, you shoot badly. So you're getting there and you're certainly with a spring gun, and you're gripping the rifle harder, and all of a sudden everything is going all over the place. So if everything goes through that 25-yard hole, then there's a good chance it's you. So at that point, put out another target of 40 yards and get someone who you know is a good shooter to shoot your gun for you. See if they can get a group, or maybe shoot their gun as well. So, you can have a bit of fun. And then that way you might understand that the issue is with you. And I hate to say this, but, I've had this in the past where I've been shooting badly, and sometimes you need to just take a little step back and then come back afresh. Maybe change the scope, something like that. And just to reset your brain. But get someone to shoot your gun and see if they can get a group. But it's got to be someone you trust, not somebody who's just going to take the mick, because I can understand how fully frustrating it can be. you're out there, you're competing and just nothing's working. So get someone you trust who's on your side to check your gun for you. Another little thing just off the top of my head is if you're shooting at 25 and everything is going on, and then when you're shooting at 8 yards, the pellets are going to the right, and at 45, the pellets are going to the left, then you've probably not got your scope perfectly central. So you'll need to set it up with a plumb line. But if you check our scope video, we'll show you how to do, we've shown you how to do that. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. The next thing is, have you changed your pellets? And I don't mean moving from JSB to air arms, or from air arms to RWS, or to QYS, or to whatever. I don't even mean the type of pellets. These are JSB 452s, and these are JSB 452s. These are very, very different pellets, even though they're identical. Because on the back, these are die number 63s. These are die number 54s. These these pellets are absolutely amazing in my TX200. These are shocking. These are amazing in my HFT 500. Actually, these are pretty good as well. But let's say these are shocking, except they're not. If you've just gone to the shop and bought a new tin of pellets, they might not be brilliant for your rifle, even though they look identical. When I buy a sleeve of pellets at a time, and if they're great, I try and buy as many sleeves as I can. I'm lucky I can do that. I know it can be really frustrating to buy essentially the identical type of pellets and then just not work, but it's something you need to be aware of. Pellet testing and things like that can be expensive and frustrating, but if you want the best out of your rifle, unfortunately, picking the right pellet and the right head size and the right batch number and all of that can be just as important as the right gun. So sometimes you need to buy some pellets. If they don't work, you need to palm them off on somebody else and let them try in their gun. If they like it, they'll buy them from you. And that's what you get in the HFT community. I've had pellets in the past. I bought them. They were terrible. A friend of mine tried them, loved them, bought the sleeve off me, and then I went and bought another sleeve, or I've done things like that. So pellets, really important. Just because they look the same, they're not the same. Okay, so we've checked that everything's tight. We've checked up, we know we're using the same batch of pellets and everything is good. We're shooting at 25 yards. The group is still opening up. We've got someone to test the gun. The group is still opening up. So we know that there is an issue with the rifle or the scope, or there is an issue somewhere. So now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a light clean. A light clean, it can be done like chucking a few felts through. We're going to do a full cleaning video coming up very, very soon. But most people will use a pull through where they essentially do a looped fishing line. They put it through the rifle, put a patch at the end with some cleaner on it and pull the rifle through. And you'll notice that gunk will start coming off the rifle. So you pull this through 2 or 3 times, you give it a clean, you fire 10, 15 pellets through to re-lead the barrel, and then you go and test again. That is a standard thing that most shooters do. My mate Alex, he's got a Steyr, and after 100 shots or so, the gun goes off. He needs to keep it. The gun likes a clean barrel. Now, it might be a case that if you've got a rifle that you've used for years and you've never really cleaned the barrel on it and it's always been accurate, you might have a rifle that doesn't particularly like a clean barrel. But as barrels get older, especially if they've if they've been left in the damp overnight, they might have got a surface layer of rust inside them. If they've been left, in a cupboard, that's something you might need to do. Now, after you've done a light clean, either with felts or with a pull through, you can do a deep clean. And that way you can get a rod and a thing called VFG paste, or you can use Autosol, and that will actually pull everything out of your barrel. That is a much more aggressive way of cleaning your barrel. Whatever you do, never ever use these. You know, you can buy these kits with like the bronze brushes, the actual metal brushes. Please don't use them in air gun barrels. The lands and grooves are very fine, and you will do some damage. So never ever use, never ever use one of these bronze brushes. But a light clean with a pull through. Deep clean is something that I personally think is a Hail Mary. It's one of the last things you do. But a deep clean is something that we're going to do in a video, hopefully coming up fairly soon. And that will pull all of the lead, everything out of your rifle, and it will almost like set you back. It's like a factory reset on the barrel. But yeah, so give your barrel a light clear through and then see how you go. Okay, this is something that's actually quite rare, but once you've checked that your rifle is clear, like that, have a look down the end of your barrel and see if there are any marks on the inside. Is there a build-up of lead on the inside of a moderator or a stripper? Some people have been known to use a small amount of Tipp-Ex around the barrel, just on the end, and then when the pellet flies, you're seeing whether or not it is actually touching the barrel as the pellet is coming out. It's called clipping. It's causing damage to the pellet as it's getting out into the air. Usually with a torch you can see whether or not there's any marks, because it'll be like a silver streak of build up of lead. So watch out for clipping on the end of your barrel. Another thing, when we're talking about clipping, is at this end. Now I don't actually have a rifle here with a magazine system, but magazine systems can be a little bit funky sometimes. As they get old, the springs get, they're not as strong as they used to be. And if you are pushing your bolt forward and it's picking the round up in the magazine, it's pushing it forward, it has been known for pellets to almost be squashed on the side as they're coming out the magazine into the barrel. So if you can, push it forward, but always see if you can see the back end of the pellet before it goes all the way into the breech. Has that pellet been deformed? Obviously, when you're loading pellets, check to make sure that there's no pellet damage before you put them in. If you've got a quarter tin of pellets that have been rattling around in your bag and all the skirts are damaged, that could very well be your problem. But check that when you're loading the rifle that it's loading a nice clean pellet. Some rifles, and we did this once with the Alpha Wolf, which was superb, we were thumbing pellets into the breech as opposed to using the magazine. So if you can do that, thumb a pellet in, push the probe forward and shoot, as long as it's safe to do so, and see whether or not that affects your issue. So check your magazine and check to make sure that the pellets are in good condition as they are going into the breech. So now we've pretty much done everything we can with the rifle. We've checked that everything is right and tight. We know that we've got good pellets. We've checked that it's not clipping. We've replaced all the seals that we need to do. We've got good air in the gun. The butt pad is tight. The scope is tight. Everything is tight. Everything is good. And we're still not getting good groups. And now we need to look at the scope. Scopes are absolutely amazing. I mean, I've got on here a Optisan CP. It's a really brilliant scope. But scopes do get old. You know, this is a field sport. We're out going from hot to cold. And scopes, as you're adjusting and things like that, they get weak. They've got springs in them, and some of them have got like coil springs. Some of them have just got a bar that actually holds your elevation and your windage. And it might be a case that your scope's just got old and it's starting to fall apart, and I know how it feels. So this might be the point where you need to either get a second scope, borrow a scope. There's a lot of people out there who are scope magpies and will happily lend you a scope. So slap another scope on it, 0 out of 25 yards, set the parallax and go. If all of a sudden you're now getting that pellet in that mark every single time, you know there's an issue with the scope. Now, if you're lucky and you've bought a scope like a Hawk, they've got a lifetime warranty. MTC have got great warranties, so does Optisan. So that's another advantage with buying your scope from a manufacturer. Sorry, from a gun shop, is you'll get all the proper receipts and everything like that, and never throw them away. Leave them in the box, because at that point, if you call up Hawk and say, "Hello, Mr. Hawk, my scope's gone," they will fix it, or they will probably send you a new scope, because their lifetime warranty is second to none. But sometimes you just need to take your scope off and try another one and just see what's going on. If you want to prove your scope, see if you can borrow another gun and put your scope on that gun and see if it's accurate. And yeah, that's pretty much about that. So you can send the scope off, and someone like Hawk, they'll put it on their collimator and they'll be able to test it and see if it's fixable. But often it might just be a case that you need to replace it. But yeah, so that's scopes. Well, that is about it, I'm afraid. It's one of these things that it's not rocket science to find out what's going on, but it can be incredibly frustrating. I've had it in the past where I've gone through all of these steps and the gun still isn't working. There are often little things. I mean, these are high precision, these are high precision pieces of kit. If you think about it, at 45 yards, we're chucking a piece of lead at 800 feet per second, and we're expecting it to hit inside of a 5p piece. That's not an easy thing to do. There are many things that can affect it. And from a practical point of view, you need to be aware of your surroundings as well. If you're lucky to be a member of someone at Morton District, we've got a plinking tube, which is like a large tube about that big, and it's completely windless and you can shoot down the middle of it, and that way it negates any of the outside conditions. If you go to somewhere like Pete's Farm, which is like a big indoor barn and you can shoot, there are plenty of places like this all over the country. You've got still conditions where you can test your rifle. It's worth, when you're setting up, if you're on an outdoor range and you're trying to work out accuracy, you need to get out there just and hold some cotton up and just to see how much movement you've got there, because a 2 or 3 mile an hour wind, if the wind is coming at you and it's quartering, it's going left and right, or it's bouncing off trees, that could be causing your inaccuracy. Now, realistically, if you're in like a 2 or 3 mile an hour wind at 25 yards, it's not going to move that much. It's, a quarter of a pellet, if that. But if you're testing your gun out of 40 and 45, then you're going to get some movement. So check your conditions before you go out and set. And if you're indoors and if you have the ability to go around downrange, go down and check. Many years ago when I was shooting, I think it was at Pete's Farm, we knew that if you went beyond 40 yards, down at the back where the hay bales used to be, there was a fraction of a little bit of a drift from left to right. And apparently there was a hole in one of the sidings and wind would come round. I think that somebody said to me the other day, that's all been blocked up now and it's no longer an issue. But know your surroundings and know where, and know how your pellet is going to be affected. But yeah, so that's about it. It's a little short video today. We're just going to go over we've just gone over a few basics of what can cause you inaccuracy. If I've missed something, and I'm sure I have, please put it down in the comments below. I'm always happy to learn, and it might just be a case that I've forgotten something, and I'm getting old and the brain isn't very good. But we've got some good content coming up soon. We've got the start of the Southern Hunter series, which is going to be at Buxted on the 8th of December. Go to UKAHFT.net, UKAHFT.com.co.uk.org. It's one of those. Just put in UKAHFT in Google, and the dates for next year have been released. So we're going to have more HFT content to come. Jason Lockett has now finished with the bench rest for the year, so we're going to be getting the part 2 of the bench rest video done very soon. And yeah, that's about it. Next week, or in the next couple of weeks, I'm off to Malden District setting up our Christmas video, which is going to be, we always do a 100-yard video. So this year, I think we're going to do it with the BRK Ghost. So, and let's see how we do with that. So yeah, ball pup at 100 yards. So that's going to be fun. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you on the range again very, very soon. Ta-da!